Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Well guys, it's happened again. My iron deficiency disorder got to itching a little bit and I had to go do something about it. So I adopted a new machine, brought it into Keith's Home for Wayward Machines, and I am proud to say that this is a new machine / project that we're going to be bringing in the shop that I am really excited about. This is something I've actually been looking for a little while. What I've got here is a Thompson surface grinder. This is one of the larger versions that they made. Actually, it's one of the smaller versions that they made, but it's a much larger than your typical tool room size surface grinder. Many of you will say, well, Keith already has a Thompson surface grinder. Yes, I do. I have what's called their Model F, which mine is 9 inches by 18-inch chuck on it. So this is the mag chuck on it. So 9 by 18. This mag chuck on this one, 12 inches by 30. So we've got a lot more surface area that we can grind on with this grinder. And because of the type of work that I'm doing, restoration work, I often have the need to grind a little bit larger parts. In fact, even to the point of machinery weighs and things like that. This, I would like to find one that's even a little bit larger than this, that I could put something like a table off of a milling machine on and be able to do some smaller machine grinding jobs in-house without having to send them out. But this one should do very good for me and allow me to do some of the stuff that I'm kind of limited on right now. So again, right now I have 2 surface grinders in the shop. I've got my Landis 9 by 24 mechanical grinder. It's automatic, but it's mechanically operated. It's got a rack and pinion in it. It's all completely automatic. Nice grinder, has done me a very good job. A couple of years ago, I upgraded to a Thompson. My Thompson is a little bit smaller mag chuck on it, but completely hydraulic. These Thompson grinders where the cats meow, these things are they're incredibly overbuilt. They're extremely rigid machines, and really, when they were new anyway, they were exceptional grinders for what they are. And my Thompson that I've got in there, it grinds beautifully. So my plan is, though, that once I kind of get this one up and going, the 2 that I have are probably going to leave, and it will be replaced by this one to kind of save on some room in the shop. In fact, the Landis grinder is already sold. It's still in here. I've got a local person that ended up purchasing that from me, and we're going to be hauling it out of here pretty soon. But really excited to have this grinder. Let's go around and talk a little bit about it. I will say this. I got it from a gentleman up in Tennessee, kind of between Chattanooga and Knoxville area. He told me that he had purchased it at an auction in Nashville, Tennessee, had brought it out to his shop. The gentleman is actually a viewer of my channel. We got up there and started talking to him, and he's like, oh yeah, I watch your channel all the time. I didn't know that until I actually got there and started talking to him. But he had got this for his shop, and the main reason that he decided not to keep it was because one of the motors on this, this thing actually has multiple motors. It has the spindle motor up here, which powers a spindle. It has a hydraulic pump that is driven by a motor on the back. It has a motor here for the coolant pump. It also has electronics for the mag chuck, as well as there's a lubricator, automatic lubricator on here. So a lot of things electrically going on with this grinder. When he bought it, it was all wired for 440 volts, 460 volts, whatever you want to say. And his plan was that he was going to bring it in and basically change all the motors where they would run on 220, which most 3-phase motors you can do that on. However, one of the motors on this one had been rewound at some point in time. They didn't have the 9 leads coming out of it that you could change the voltage on it. And because of that, it wasn't going to be feasible for him to change that motor over without replacing the motor, having it rewound, or the other option is to put a transformer on it, a step-up transformer to step his 220 volt 3-phase power up to 440. He did not want to go down that path. He decided to sell it. He put it on Facebook Marketplace. I saw it and contacted him, and the rest is history. It followed me home. My plan is we're going to put it all back on 440 volts, and I'm going to get a transformer, and I'm just going to step the voltage up. I looked at maybe trying to get that one motor rewound, and when I got to talk with my motor shop, it's going to be cheaper to buy a transformer than it was really to rewind the motor. So that's the route that I think I'm going to go on it. So anyway, let's do a quick walk around, take a look at some of the features on this grinder. I've kind of come in here and pulled some covers off and started doing some inspecting. So some of the stuff that you see, like the open front, it was not that way when I got it. It was all buttoned up, but I have done a few things to it already. So let's take a quick look at it. So first off, let's just take a quick look at the head on this. And yeah, the paint job on it looks pretty rough. But I mean, I think mechanically it's in decent shape. Bearings sound good. He said that before he brought it home, he did see it run. So he knows it was running. These Thompson grinders are a little bit different than a lot of surface grinders. You got the chuck, of course, that's moving back and forth up underneath it. The chuck stays stationary other than the left and right movement. On a lot of them, the table will kind of move in and out as far, and also left and right. This one, the table only moves left and right. And the whole head up here is on a set of ways that kind of hang from above, and it moves back and forth. So the stone is moving across the work rather than the work moving under the stone. Another cool feature of these Thompson grinders is this little thing right here. This is actually a wheel dresser that's built into it. You put a little diamond nib in here. It feels like there may be a cluster diamond in there right now. I can't see it very well, but you can move this out, and basically when the wheel goes in backwards and back, it goes up in here, and it'll dress the wheel on the machine. You don't have to put a diamond on the chuck and all that. Very nice feature because a lot of times when you've got a job set up, it's hard to get a diamond back on the table. On this, you can just adjust it right there on the machine. So really nice feature there. The hand wheel on the top. Let's see. I'll have to play around with this, but you can hand feed this thing in and out, or it's got automatic where the hydraulics will move it in and out. I'm gonna have to play around with it and see how everything's working on this thing. I know on mine, I think you gotta pull on or something. I haven't played around with it enough to know exactly, but you can manually move this in and out, or you can hydraulically move it out with the machine. Let me get an Allen wrench. I want to pull this cover off. I want to check the wheel out and see what size wheel this thing takes. So it looks like there's a couple of socket cap screws here that hold the cover shut. And we opened it up. So in here, on most of these grinders, what you've got is you've got these three wheels. It opens up the flange and the whole wheel will come off. There's also a center hub in here. You can use a spanner wrench to loosen this up, and then usually there's a couple of tap screws up underneath there. You can use a puller and you can pull it off and the whole hub will come off. And if you have multiple hubs, you can change them out fairly easily. I think right now I just want to take the cover off here. I just want to pull that wheel out and see what size wheel this is because it is different. I'm pretty sure it's going to be different than the wheels that I'm using on my smaller grinders. It'd be really convenient if it used the same wheels, but I already know that that's not the case. So let's pull this one out. So on this cover here, on a lot of these there's three little weights, and you can move those around to balance your hub if needed. Let's see here. Here it comes. We got a Norton wheel in here, and papers coming off the back. Those paper pieces are important. You always want to clamp on the paper and not directly on the stone. So, all right, let's see what we got. So the center of this, I believe, is going to be 5 inches. It is. And the stone that's on here is, this one's basically 2 inches wide, or 2 inches thick, however you want to call it. And you got a recess on either side. The center section there looks like it might be 1 inch. You can see. So yeah, basically 1 inch. A little less than that, but you got room to squeeze in there. So the center part would be 1 inch. So you could use a 1 inch wide wheel with a 5 inch ring on it, or you could use a 2 inch wide wheel, which is, I think, what the catalog says this grinder takes, is a 2 inch wide wheel, which is what's on it. And let's see, what's the outside diameter on the wheel? That's an 11.5 inch wheel. Looks like it'll take a 12 inch wheel without any problem. So probably 12 inches when it was new. All right, that helps me out. I can at least be looking to see if I can find some wheels for this thing that I can use. This wheel here appears to be in good shape. It rings. That's a good sign. If it goes clunk, that usually means that they're got a crack or something in it. So looks like a very nice wheel that's on here. I'm gonna set this aside right now. When I was out at the Barsey Summer Bash this summer, Dale Derry had a grinding hub here that he gave me. Actually, we did some trading. I sent him some tool holders, and he sent this home with me. Said he didn't have a need for it, and I said, I don't either, but I'll take it and find somebody that can use it. This thing has a 5 inch inside diameter. It's possible that this hub might fit up on here. I'm not sure if the taper's the same that this fits up on. I'll have to pop that off and see, but that's a possibility. A nice new hub. Think I could get so lucky? Maybe. So looking at the magnetic chuck itself, again, we got 12 inches wide and 30 inches long. Appears to be in decent shape. There's definitely some apprentice marks in here where the wheel has hit the table, but that's not a big deal. It can be ground out if you really want them out, but usually it's kind of below the surface, so you'll get a flat clamping on here. And as I'm going through this machine, we'll probably pull this chuck off and get it reground. I will regrind it on the machine, but regrind it all in just to make sure everything's nice and tuned up like it needs to be at some point. Looks like the chuck was made by Magnalock. I don't know if that's in the frame or not, or whether you can see it, but Magnalock looks like the brand name of this. Of course, this is a direct current chuck. You put the direct current voltage in here and it will turn it on and hold down anything to the chuck that's magnetic or will stick to a magnet. So anyway, I think that very nice. I've seen surface grinder chucks in much worse shape, I'll put it that way, but that should be a nice chuck once we get it ground out and get a good surface on it, which is something you need to do periodically on a grinder anyway. Another nice thing with this chuck is it comes with this Neutrofire made by the Electromagnetic Products Company. This is a variable remote to control how much magnetic pressure is on the chuck. This is a very nice feature to have. This is something I've never had on a chuck, on any of my chucks before. They've always either been on or off, so 0 or 100%. With this, I can adjust. There's a little potentiometer here. You can adjust how much magnetic force is on there. So with some things, particularly if it's not being chucked down all the way on the chuck, you can actually the magnetic forces can actually bend the metal and cause it to not grind perfectly flat, because when you release the chuck, it kind of springs back out. So this is a very nice feature to have this variable holding power in there. Um, anyway, and again, hopefully it all works. I don't have any power on it right now. Over here, we've got our controls. I'll have to figure out exactly what's going on. Usually one of these is going to start the spindle, and one of them is going to start the hydraulics. So I'm assuming that's going to be the case with this one. Over here on the front of the machine, you've got some basic controls. This basically controls the table going back and forth. There's a little cam lobe up underneath here that when you engage that, it will engage a little rack and pinion down here and let you manually move the table back and forth. I don't know this. I know on my other Thompson grinder, which is a little bit different setup, there's an interlock where the table will not engage while the hydraulics are engaged. So I'll have to figure all that out. Over here, this is what adjusts the depth or how much you're cutting off. Very nice big wheel. Has very coarse gradations on here. So, you know, you can easily dial in really a 10,000th of an inch on this. So there's a scale on here that will let you dial this into a 10,000th of an inch, which is a really nice feature again. So that's 60 to 65, 70. So for every thousandth, you got that nice tenth scale in there to work off of. And it has a fine adjust over here too, where you can turn this knob to get your fine adjust, and of course the big knob to get your coarse adjust. This is what reverses the table back and forth. You put stops on here and it will change the hydraulics to move the table back and forth. And these knobs down here, again, I don't know exactly how they work, but that's going to control how fast the table is moving back and forth, and I believe it's also going to control how fast the head moves in and out. That's my other Thompson grinder, has those controls on the front. It has knobs instead of levers like this, but I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen. Same type of control, and you got some stops in here that you can control that as well. How much that's going back and forth there on. I'm pretty sure that's going to be the feed left and right. Front port here that opens up into the base of the machine. I did take that cover off because I wanted to inspect up in there. And I think we're going to need to do a fluid change on this. This is a hydraulically driven machine. So basically the bottom of this machine is full of hydraulic oil. And just looking at the oil, to me it looks dirty, it looks cloudy. I think it needs to be changed. So we're going to go ahead and do that. The downside is down here, look here, if you can read that, this thing holds 60 gallons of hydraulic fluid. That's going to take a bite out of the budget right there, replacing all that. But I do believe it needs to be done, and we're going to be doing that while we are working on getting this thing cleaned up. I want to drain all that oil out, get in there with a mop or something and clean up if there's any dirt or dust in there, and just get that fluid, get that whole compartment clean before we put fresh fluid back in there. No telling when the last time that oil was changed. It looks pretty nasty, so I think it's overdue for an oil change. Kind of looking on the side of the machine here. The back side of this is a big coolant tank that's built into the machine. My other Thompson grinder has a very similar setup here, really nice. So you can see there's a big pump here that pumps the coolant up. You got a ball valve here to control the flow, and it puts it out right there up underneath the grindstone. The water circulates back in here, the coolant does, and just recycles itself. So very nice setup there. Also, just point out up here on the side, we've got some stops. This is what where you can adjust how far the travel of the wheel going in and out is. Same basic setup I have on my other Thompson grinder. You just move these dogs in and out, and it goes up against this little switch, and that's what lets it goes back and forth back there. This is the motor. That's a direct drive motor there. There's no pulleys, no belts or anything to introduce vibration into this whole system, so you get a really nice grind. And so it has its own dedicated motor here just for that. Taking a look down inside this here nasty coolant tank, and we will definitely be taking the opportunity to get this thing cleaned out. It's still wet down in there in the bottom, which is probably good because you're going to get grinding dust and everything else that gets in here. These tanks just have to be cleaned periodically, and they're definitely due. I've got some wires just connected right now. That's what that is, but there is a lid that covers this up to help with evaporation. Now, one thing that's kind of neat about it is there's kind of 3 different chambers in here. So the stuff comes from the table and dumps into this big tank. And if you look, it's separated from the other one, but there's a little gap back here in the back. So all your heavy stuff is going to drop down to the bottom. Hopefully in this tank, you'll get some coolant that flows over the top here into this second tank. And this tank has a separator here. This is where it actually is pumping out of, but it's open in the bottom. And basically what that happens is you usually have a bunch of crap that's just floating up here on the top. That will keep that stuff from floating over into the area that you're pumping out of. So you kind of got some separation going on in here. Again, most of the stuff's going to be separated out over there, but that's just something you see in a lot of coolant tanks like this. And they do need to be cleaned out periodically, and we will be getting this thing cleaned up before we put it back in service. On the back side of the machine, I will note that there's a hydraulic pump that goes down here, a motor and a pump on a little stand, and I have pulled that off. I've actually taken the pump apart. I'm going to put new seals in it, new O-rings. I've got those ordered, and I was just going ahead and cleaning that up. I've actually got the parts repainted to go back on here so that it looks a little bit nicer. But we'll be putting all that stuff back on. I kind of done that off camera. Here's the coolant pump that we were talking about. That pumps the coolant. I'm going to be replacing all this hosing and stuff. Here's the electrical box back here in the back. Nothing really exciting to see in there. I will note that the previous owner had started kind of trying to change the electrical stuff over to 220 volts. I'm going to have to go back and kind of undo what he did. And unfortunately, I don't know exactly what all he did, and he didn't keep good notes, but I talked to him about it. I don't think he did anything crazy, mostly just changing the wiring in the different motors. I'm going to have to go undo that and redo that. And I think one of the control transformers in there I need to check out. Once I get some voltage on this, I can troubleshoot all that and make sure it's right. Got a little bit of experience doing some of the control electronics, and I don't think I'll have any problem getting this figured out. Like I said before, I am going to be putting a transformer on here. I don't have that in-house yet, but I'm in the process of getting one sourced. Probably going to be getting that from American Rotary. I've already got a call into them. They're checking to see what they got. Not something that they make, but they do stock transformers, and I think we're going to put a 15 kVA transformer on here that I can run off of a 30 amp, 220 volt, 3-phase circuit. And it'll step the voltage up to 440. The amperage will drop down to 15 amps, but that'll be more than enough to run everything on here at 440 volts. So that's kind of my game plan if everything goes as planned. So there you go, guys. A quick look at the grinder. You know, I'm hoping it's a diamond in the rough. It's obviously got a little bit of rough edges on it. I'm hoping that mechanically it's going to work out all right, not have any major problems. Again, the person I got it from saw it in operation, said it sounded good, looked like it was working good. But you know, until we get power to it and really get it checked out, you just don't know what you're going to run into. If everything is mechanically working all right, and my plan is you know, we'll get in here probably after we get it up and going, we'll put a quick grind on that chuck and do an inspection, see what kind of tolerances we get off of the grinds, and see how flat it's grinding things. If it looks good, I'm gonna leave it alone. We're gonna use it. If it's got some deviations in it, we will probably do a little scraping on it to fix it up. My friend John Terry down in Florida has a Thompson grinder. This is a little bit larger than this one. but I actually helped him a couple of years ago. We re-scraped the table in on it. Very simple on this. You got this table on here, rides on 2 ways. You got some hydraulic cylinders that push it back and forth. You disconnect those, the table comes straight off, and we can get in there with some straight edges and get those ways trued up fairly easily. I'm assuming and hoping, based off of what we did on his, and scrape it back in if that is necessary. Again, we're going to wait and see, but that's always an option, assuming everything else mechanically works all right. The paint job on it is rough. I definitely want to do something about that, get the rust off of it, get it where it looks a little bit nicer. And this is where I got to ask you guys' help. So here in a couple of weekends, on the 19th of August of this is 2023, when this video is being made, I'm going to see if maybe I can get a handful of people that are willing to come into the shop and help me do some grunt work. And what I want to do is basically get in here with some wire wheels and what have you, and just get this thing stripped down, get the paint off of it, get a fresh coat of paint put on it. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time, with Bondo and body filler and all that kind of stuff. I just want to get a good paint coating on it where it looks a little bit nicer and get any rust that's on here cleaned up. So I've actually already started that with the motor and pump that I took off. I've already cleaned those up and got those repainted. And I'll probably go ahead and get started on a couple of areas even before we do that. So if anybody's interested in coming in on the 19th of August, 2023, very informal, just let me know, shoot me an email. Right down below here is my email address. Let me know you're interested in coming. I'll give you the details. And I think that if we can get even just 3 or 4 people, we should be able to get this machine prepped for paint, maybe even a coat of paint on it on a Saturday. I know we did that several years ago, and I brought in my Carlton radial drill. I had just a handful of people come in, and we made very short work out of it and got it done very quickly. So again, if you're interested in doing that, I'm located in Tifton, Georgia, South Georgia, about 60 miles north of Florida, not very far off of I-75. If you're willing to come in and help out for a day, probably more local folks, although if somebody wants to travel, that's totally up to you. And if somebody wants to stay, over on Sunday, I'm sure that we can come up with something to play around with, whatever, on Sunday as well. But probably Saturday would be the main work day to come in here. So if you're interested, again, shoot me that email, and maybe we can get a handful of people. I don't need a huge crowd, just a couple of folks, and I think we can get this thing knocked out in a Saturday or a weekend. So anyway, hoping some of you guys will take me up on that. With that, I think I pretty well covered it. See my new toy. Really want to get this thing up and going, get it checked out, and hopefully we can get those other grinders out of the shop, get this one in here. I've actually got some grinding jobs I need to do before too terribly long, and I would love to do it on this grinder. I'm going to hang on to my other Thompson until I get this one going, but at some point in time, I'll probably let it go. Like I said, the Landis grinder is leaving soon, so I've already got a buyer for it. Guys, with that, we're going to sign off. As always, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thumbs up and comments are always greatly appreciated. Really helps out with the algorithms on YouTube. Big, huge thank you to all the supporters of the site, support on Patreon, PayPal, etc. Couldn't take the time to do it. I go through this every single time, guys. Probably get tired of hearing it, but I really, really appreciate those that help out. Guys, with that, we will catch you on the next video again. Thanks for watching.